religion, and we know for a fact that the corollary holds true, that religion has caused innumerable people not just to conduct themselves no better than others, but to award themselves permission to behave in ways that would make a brothel keeper or an ethnic cleanser raise an eyebrow. Most important of all, perhaps, we infidels do not need any machinery of reinforcement. We are those who Blaise Pascal took into account when he wrote to the one who says, "I am so made that I cannot believe." In the village of Montaillou, during one of the great medieval persecutions, a woman was asked by the inquisitors to tell them from whom she had acquired her heretical doubts about hell and resurrection. She must have known that she stood in terrible danger of a lingering death administered by the pious, but she responded that she took them from nobody, and had evolved them all by herself. Often you hear the believers praise the simplicity of their flock, but not in the case of this unforced and conscientious sanity and lucidity, which has been stamped out and burned out in the cases of more humans than we shall ever be able to name. There is no need for us to gather every day, or every 7 days, or on any high and auspicious day, to proclaim our rectitude or to grovel and wallow in our unworthiness. We atheists do not require any priests or any hierarchy above them to police our doctrine. Sacrifices and ceremonies are abhorrent to us, as are relics and the worship of any images or objects, even including objects in the form of one of man's most useful innovations, the bound book. To us no spot on earth is or could be holier than another. To the ostentatious absurdity of the pilgrimage, or the plain horror of killing civilians in the name of some sacred wall or cave or shrine or rock, we can counterpose a leisurely or urgent walk from one side of the library or the gallery to another, or to lunch with an agreeable friend in pursuit of truth or beauty. Some of these excursions to the bookshelf or the lunch or the gallery will obviously, if they are serious, bring us into contact with belief and believers, from the great devotional painters and composers to the works of Augustine, Aquinas, Maimonides, and Newman. These mighty scholars may have written many evil things or many foolish things, and been laughably ignorant of the germ theory of disease or the place of the terrestrial globe in the solar system, let alone the universe, and this is the plain reason why there are no more of them today and why there will be no more of them tomorrow. Religion spoke its last intelligible or noble or inspiring words a long time ago. Either that or it mutated into an admirable but nebulous humanism, as did, say, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a brave Lutheran pastor hanged by the Nazis for his refusal to collude with them. We shall have no more prophets or sages from the ancient quarter, which is why the devotions of today are only the echoing repetitions of yesterday, sometimes ratcheted up to screaming point so as to ward off the terrible emptiness. While some religious apology is magnificent in its limited way, one might cite Pascal, and some of it is dreary and absurd, here one cannot avoid naming C.S. Lewis, both styles have something in common, namely the appalling load of strain that they have to bear. How much effort it takes to affirm the incredible. The Aztecs had to tear open a human chest cavity every day, just to make sure that the sun would rise. Monotheists are supposed to pester their deity more times than that, perhaps lest he be deaf. How much vanity must be concealed, not too effectively at that, in order to pretend that one is the personal object of a divine plan? How much self-respect must be sacrificed, in order that one may squirm continually in an awareness of one's own sin? How many needless assumptions must be made, and how much contortion is required to receive every new insight of science, and then manipulate it so as to fit with the revealed words of ancient man-made deities? How many saints and miracles and councils and conclaves are required in order first to be able to establish a dogma and then, after infinite pain and loss and absurdity and cruelty, to be forced to rescind one of those dogmas? God did not create man in his own image. Evidently it was the other way about, which is the painless explanation for the profusion of gods and religions, and the fratricide both between and among faiths, that we see all about us, and that has so retarded the development of civilization. Past and present religious atrocities have occurred not because we are evil, but because it is a fact of nature that the human species is biologically only partly rational. Evolution has meant that our prefrontal lobes are too small, our adrenal glands are too big, and our reproductive organs apparently designed by committee, a recipe which, alone or in combination, is very certain to lead to some unhappiness and disorder. But still, what a difference when one lays aside the strenuous believers and takes up the no less arduous work of a Darwin, say, or a Hawking or a Crick. These men are more enlightening when they are wrong, or when they display their inevitable biases, than any falsely modest person of faith who is vainly trying to square the circle and to explain how he, a mere creature of the Creator, can possibly know what that Creator intends. Not all can be agreed on matters of aesthetics, but we secular humanists and atheists and agnostics do not wish to deprive humanity of its wonders or consolations. Not in the least. If you will devote a little time to studying the staggering photographs taken by the Hubble telescope, you will be scrutinizing things that are far more awesome and mysterious and beautiful, and more chaotic and overwhelming and forbidding, than any creation or end of days story. If you read Hawking on the event horizon, that theoretical lip of the black hole over which one could in theory plunge and see the past and the future, except that one would regrettably, and by definition, not have enough time, I shall be surprised if you can still go on gaping at Moses and his unimpressive burning bush. If you examine the beauty and symmetry of the double helix, and then go on to have your own genome sequence fully analyzed, you will be at once impressed that such a near-perfect phenomenon is at the core of your being, and reassured, I hope, that you have so much in common with other tribes of the human species, race having gone, along with creation, into the ash can, and further fascinated to learn how much you are a part of the animal kingdom as well. Now at last you can be properly humble in the face of your Maker, which turns out not to be a who, but a process of mutation with rather more random elements than our vanity might wish. This is more than enough mystery and marvel for any mammal to be getting along with. The most educated person in the world now has to admit, I shall not say confess, that he or she knows less and less, but at least knows less and less about more and more. As for consolation, since religious people so often insist that faith answers this supposed need, I shall simply say that those who offer false consolation are false friends. In any case, the critics of religion do not simply deny that it has a pain-killing effect. Instead, they warn against the placebo and the bottle of coloured water. Probably the most popular misquotation of modern times, certainly the most popular in this argument, is the assertion that Marx dismissed religion as the opium of the people. On the contrary, this son of a rabbinical line took belief very seriously and wrote, in his contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, as follows: "Religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress and the protest against real distress. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world. Just as it is the spirit of a spiritless situation, it is the opium of the people. The abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is required for their real happiness. The demand to give up the illusions about its condition is the demand to give up a condition that needs illusions. The criticism of religion is therefore in embryo the criticism of the veil of woe, the halo of which is religion. Criticism has plucked the imaginary flowers from the chain, not so that man will wear the chain without any fantasy or consolation, but so that he will shake off the chain and cull the living flower. So, the famous misquotation is not so much a misquotation, but rather a very crude attempt to misrepresent the philosophical case against religion. Those who have believed what the priests and rabbis and imams tell them about what the unbelievers think, and about how they think, will find further such surprises as we go along. They will perhaps come to distrust what they are told, or not to take it on faith, which is the problem to begin with. Marx and Freud, it has to be conceded, were not doctors or exact scientists. It's better to think of them as great, infallible, imaginative essayists. When the intellectual universe alters, in other words, I don't feel arrogant enough to exempt myself from self-criticism. And I am content to think that some contradictions will remain contradictory. Some problems will never be resolved by the mammalian equipment of the human cerebral cortex, and some things are indefinitely unknowable. If the universe was found to be finite or infinite, either discovery would be equally stupefying and impenetrable to me. And though I have met many people much wiser and more clever than myself, I know of nobody who could be wise or intelligent enough to say differently. Thus, the mildest criticism of religion is also the most radical and the most devastating one. Religion is man-made.